Hi there, Dr. Tracy Dickens here, back for another Psalm 119 um, conversation. And today we're doing something a little bit different. Well, before I get into that, actually, this is our 10th. Can you believe it? Our 10th. Whoopsie, hold on. I'm having a camera issue. I'm gonna make sure. Okay, sorry about that. On the replay, that's gonna look a little weird. Okay, like I was saying, this is our 10th episode. I'm really excited about this. We're almost halfway through. There's 22 eight-line stanzas, and we have done 10 of them. So next month, the second Saturday, it will be our 11th. We'll be halfway through. I feel like I should do something special. I have to think about that one. What special thing can I do on that? Okay, so like I said, 10th live on Psalm 119, where I'm going through Psalm 119 twice a month. And when I go through it, I also present a lovely recipe. As you can see here, I have some strawberries. Yum. It's hot here. I'm in Texas and it is hot. And so I wanted to make something that did not require the oven. So we're going to be making sorbet, which is great because one, it's a lovely cool treat, and it also it's pretty easy. You don't need to pay for it. You can just make it with frozen fruit. So our sorbet is called Eve, and I will explain to you why it's called Eve in just a little bit. Before we get started, as always, I like to pray us in. So here we go. Thank you, God, for bringing us to another Saturday, another opportunity to be in your word and just to learn more about you so we can grow into the people that you desire us to be. I just ask that in this time, may you open our hearts and our eyes so that we can receive, understand, and correct any misinformation that we may have about you or what it means to align our hearts with you and equip us to love others as you have commanded. And this is not for ourselves, but for your glory and for our restoration. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so like I said, today we are doing no oven because it is hot. And so we're going to make sorbet. So, and I kind of thought it would be fun to do this on such a hot day. Because I know right now, probably a lot of people have planted gardens in early spring, and you're probably getting your first fruits, or maybe you're getting your second fruits. I don't know. So I thought, oh, this is great. We'll do something nice and fruity, very garden-like. When I was thinking of garden, I was also thinking, of course, of Adam and Eve in the garden. And I thought that went perfect, especially with the topic that we're talking about today. Once again, we are looking at affliction and really, how do we walk through that? Like what is God wanting us to get out of those moments when we are feeling afflicted? And if there's any situation, any two people that could ever understand the consequences and the lessons involved in affliction, and in this particular eight lines, it is about discipline. Adam and Eve would definitely know a lot about that. They were definitely disciplined after they disobeyed the one command. And if you're not familiar with Bible, by happenstance, you just came across this video, you can find all you need to know about Eve in Genesis chapters 2 through 4. But just simple, she's mother of humanity. Adam was given the command for them to not eat of one tree in the garden. They could have everything else in the garden. And the serpent came along, said some crazy stuff to Eve. Eve was like, oh, really? Maybe I can eat from that tree because I'll get smarter. Now, these are all paraphrases, so actually go to the Bible and read it. But you get the idea. And so from then on, sins enter the world. And now we have to be disciplined to get back in line. So enough about that. Let's make the semi sorbet. I've only made it one time, but I really liked it. It's super simple. So I have some frozen strawberries here. And some things you may not know about strawberries. Some things you may not know about strawberries. They actually have more vitamin C in them than oranges. I know most people think, oh, go get oranges. But actually, strawberries have way more vitamin C in them. And also, benefits of strawberries is that they are great for heart health because they reduce your bad cholesterol, so your LDL, and they also reduce triglycerides. And even though they're sweet, they don't spike your blood sugar, which is also a good thing. So that means that your blood pressure can be regulated. And then, probably what I think is really great as a person who has migraines is that when you eat them, they are really great at reducing systemic inflammation, meaning in your entire body, strawberries have chemicals in them that reduce inflammation in your system. Also, your brain, which is always good for brain health. Okay, so enough about that smart science stuff. I think you get the point. Strawberries are pretty amazing. So I'm going to put these in my little tiny KitchenAid processor. I do think it works better if you put it in a blender. Unfortunately, I got rid of my blender when I moved a few months ago because I have a smaller place and don't have a bunch of space for a bunch of appliances. And I am a kitchen gadget girl because I do a lot of course, baking and cooking. I mean, I was going to start a baking business. So, okay, so this recipe also calls for lemon juice. And because lemon juice can be a trigger for migraines, instead of using lemon juice, I'm going to be using citric acid, which is not as disruptive to the system. Of course, you still want to use it in a limited amount, but I just put 2 cups of frozen strawberries in here. If you get fresh strawberries, just put them in the freezer for about 2 to 3 hours so they can get frozen, soft frozen. I took these out of the freezer about 30 minutes ago, so they're a little bit soft, so they'll blend a little bit easier. You don't want to take them directly out of the freezer and put them in the food processor because it just doesn't work as well. So I'm putting in a teaspoon of citric acid so we can get that nice citrusy flavor. It brings out the taste of the strawberries and gives a little zha. And then, so now this is when you can get creative. So I'm going to use maple syrup, but you can use regular sugar. Basically, whatever sweetener you want to go with that. I'm going to start off with a fourth of a cup. I found that sometimes I need a little bit more than that. So that's why on the recipe that you'll see later uh, in the description down below, you'll see that it has variations. And you may want to add more. I don't really like sorbet to be super sweet. I like for it to be refreshing. And now this is optional. I kind of like putting a little bit of something creamy in there just to lighten the color, make it a little prettier. And I do think it adds a lovely little mouthfeel. I put coconut milk. If coconut is not something that is triggering for you with regards to migraines, then go ahead. I do think it tastes better with coconut milk, but I have oat milk and oat milk is pretty creamy. And so I'm going to go with that. So as you can see, I'm putting everything in the blender. I'm in the food processor. My goodness, blender. Okay, now I'm going to turn this turner on. And, well, I think I'm going to turn her on. Maybe I'm not going to turn her on because she is not coming on. Oh, wait. Hold on. There we are. And we're just going to blend until it's smooth, until it's the texture that you want, basically. It's still a little chunky. La da da, la da da, la da da, la da da. Okay, that looks pretty smooth to me. I'm going to taste it and see if it's the right. Ooh, yeah, that is heavenly. Okay, that is really yummy. I put my foot in that. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're going to wash the sauce and just put my nasty germs on it. If you are somebody who does a lot of cooking, I strongly suggest getting a motion sensor soap dispenser for your kitchen. It makes life so much easier. Okay, so see how fast and quick that went? Man. Okay, I had to wipe off my forehead. All that work broke up a sweat. I'm joking. Actually, it's called, you know what? I think I had all this stuff in front of the camera. Sorry, rookie move. Okay, so I have one of these really great collapsible bowls. I love these. They're silicone. I'm not sure where I got these from. Maybe Amazon, maybe Target, many moons ago. I've had them for a while. I give these a lot to my friends because if you have a small space, it's great because they collapse. They go in the microwave. You can put them in the oven. They're fantastic. Best invention ever. Okay, so you can kind of see the texture of this. I just kind of, and so now I'm going to put it in this lovely container and we're going to put it in the freezer. And then in a couple hours, you'll be able to go in there and scoop some out. I made some earlier in the week and I can show you what it looks like from what I did earlier in the week. Gosh, this stuff is so good. And honestly, if you want it to, you could just go ahead and eat it now. I mean, judgment-free zone here. I will not judge you at all because it's pretty divine. I think this batch actually turned out better than my last batch. But that makes sense because my last batch was the first time I made it and I followed the recipe. And if you've been around here long enough, you know that I don't, not if you've been around here long enough, if you know me, you know I am not a big person that follows recipes. I do it, I follow the recipe the first time and then I figure out how to tweak it and make it my own. And so what you got today was my little tweaks, what I kind of figured out from making it the first time. Okay, so now let's see here. See? And show what it looks like in there. I'm gonna put the lid on there and stick it in the freezer. And this lasts for about a month in the freezer. So you have a lovely sweet treats for the summer. Like I said, if you go ahead and ignore it, I'm not gonna say anything. So here's mine. And you kind of see what mine looks like. From, see, haven't eaten that much because I make these lovely little cupcakes every other week and keep them in my freezer for days when I just want a sweet treat. And I've been eating those instead of this. I know, but I'm going to have some of this today. But not while we talk, because I feel like it'll be rude, me eating that while we're talking. So I'm going to stick all this stuff out of the way so we have a clean space so we can talk about verses 73 through 80, which I'm really excited about. I know we've talked about affliction a lot, but I do think it's one of those areas that Christians really struggle with. The minute we have a difficult season, we start questioning God's goodness and if we've done something wrong. And sometimes we have done something wrong and He is correcting us. But sometimes He's allowing things to happen to shape us into the person that He designed us to be. So if you wonder where I got the citric acid from, I'm pretty sure I got this from Amazon. I'm most certain I did. I'm pretty sure. I probably should do an Amazon store because I get so much stuff from Amazon. And then you guys could just, go on there and get the same stuff. And I'm not sponsored by any of these people. So I don't have anything with Oatly or anything with, I think that maple syrup is from Sam's. My mom goes there often and brings me maple syrup because I use so much of it for sweetening because it doesn't spike the glucose as much as regular sugar does. Okay, so there's Eve. We learned a little about her. So now let's get into Psalm 119, verses 73 through 80. The 10th letter of the alphabet, it represents confidence in the law, a hand, or a spark. It represents divine action, omnipresence, and humility. And the really great thing about this particular letter, which is Yod, I believe, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I really need to take Hebrew so I know how to pronounce words a lot better. I always feel like I'm butchering it. But Yod, maybe it's Yod. I heard it earlier in the week, and since then I've slept and I've forgotten. So if I'm butchering it, I apologize. I need to do better about that. But this particular letter of the alphabet, it's the smallest letter of the alphabet, and it resembles an apostrophe. Like if you have a language where you use an apostrophe, in English we have an apostrophe, a little bitty tiny like kind of curve hook, and it's usually suggesting uh, ownership in English. Um, but because it's so small, it's like the shape of an apostrophe, a little curve that you put between letters. Some of some people say that it's the smallest letter of the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, yet it represents divine action, omnipresence. It represents something very large, which then people think of it as this letter that represents strength in small things, which is pretty great. It kind of represents humility in that way, or greatness and modesty. So these 8 verses, like I said, they have to deal with what is God wanting us to learn in seasons of affliction. And the psalmist, once again, is praying. Most of the verses in Psalm 119 are the psalmist praying to God, asking him for clarity or understanding or strength or endurance, et cetera, et cetera. So, and as always, I usually try and look at the verses in sections. So I'm going to read the verses, and then as I'm reading them, see if you notice kind of the layout of the verses, kind of the 2 or 3 topics that are being presented from the psalmist, and then we'll get into it. Psalm 119, verses 73 through 80, and this is the NASB translation. Your hands made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn your commandments. May those who fear you see me and be glad, because I wait for your word. I know, O Lord, that your judgments are righteous, and that in faithfulness you have afflicted me. Oh, may your loving kindness comfort me, according to your word to your servant. May your compassion come to me that I may live, for your law is my delight. May the arrogant be ashamed, for they subvert me with a lie, but I shall meditate on your precepts. May those who fear you turn to me, even those, but may those who fear you turn to me, even those who know your testimonies. May my heart be blameless in your statutes, so that I will not be ashamed. Okay, those are the verses. So in this translation, it's not as easy to see, but when you look at maybe like the NLT translation, or I'm trying to think of my CSB has it. But when you look at another translations, you can see the word let, and actually it's kind of let, which it's kind of suggested with the may your loving kindness, may your compassion, may the arrogant, may those who fear, may those, like, you see this, okay, I see this repetition of may. And so that's one thing we're going to talk about, because like I said in previous videos, where you see repetition, there's something that God wants you to focus on. And then the other aspect that I noticed in these particular verses is that you have 3 basic themes. The psalmist is saying, God made us, so we know him. God tests us, so we trust him. And God afflicts us, so we can live a blameless life. Yeah, that's a lot, right? So C.S. Lewis wrote, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It's the megaphone to rouse a deaf world. And that's from Problem of Pain, page 91. And if you've never read anything by C.S. Lewis, run, don't walk, read something by him. Most people definitely know him by uh, Chronicles of Narnia, which is great, which I do know him by that. But his books are just amazing. Mere Christianity, The Great Divorce, Screw tape letters. I think screw tape letters was the first thing I read from CSW, CSW, CS, CS Lewis, and then I read Chronicles of Narnia. Screw tape letters is just masterful. Okay, so, but I digress. So you can tell from that quote that pain has a purpose in our life. And I remember, so last year for my birthday, for the first time, I got to learn how to make pottery. And I was so excited because it's been on my bucket list for a really long time. Just have a lump of clay and you shape it and mold it and do all this stuff with your hands. And then, wow, you have this pot. And I love the entire experience. One thing I noticed that helped me understand a lot of the metaphors that use God as the potter and we are the clay. I really understood that a lot more because when you sit down to that table and the pedal, you really just have like the cylinder of clay. And then you put your foot on the wheel, and then as it's spinning, you add water, and then you are using your hands to shape the clay into the vessel that you're wanting. And there's times when you put pressure, and there's times when you work on smoothing. There's times when you put your fingers down, deep into it and really kind of smooth out the edges. There's times when you just focus on the edges or the top of it or the bottom of it. There's all these ways that you move your hands and you apply different amounts of pressure and pressure to certain places that develops the shape that you want. And I hope you're catching the metaphor here, right? And there's a change in speed. Sometimes the speed is faster, sometimes it's slower. And so again, I hope you're understanding the metaphor that we are the clay in God's hands. And sometimes you're just spinning it, he's just spinning it, and then sometimes he is going to apply pressure. Sometimes it's for the entire thing, sometimes it might just be the edges. Sometimes the wheel's going to go faster, sometimes that pressure is going to be slower, but all of it has a purpose. And when we're in it, it feels not so good sometimes. But the ultimate idea, the ultimate desire is to produce a vessel that will carry something of importance, that will carry something, that will hold something that can be helpful, that can be useful, that can be memorable. So it's not done willy nilly. There's a thought process to what do I want to use this vessel for? And that is going to dictate how fast, how slow, how I move my hands, the amount of pressure, where I put the pressure. Because the end game is to have a vessel that serves the purpose that I have in mind. So I'm hoping you are catching the metaphor. Because this is true for God. He made each of us and he knows what he placed inside of us. And he has a vision for you and for me. And he knows what's required to bring that vision out of us. Okay. And so in let's see here, verse 74. Well, actually, verse 73, let's start there. So when the psalmist is talking about how God fashioned us, the clay, give me understanding that I may learn your commandments. We can't get understanding aside from God. So think of it as, when I was making that pottery, I knew what I wanted to use that pottery for. If I would have been thinking, I would have brought it out so you could see it. And it's gorgeous. I made two pieces. I'm trying to remember to do that at the end. I'm trying to think where I put them. I don't know where they are. I have to find them. Focus, Tracy. Um, so anyway, but because God is the one who made us, who shaped us, fashioned us, he knows the purpose. So he's the only one that can help us understand who he is and what our calling is. Our purpose is to glorify him. And how we glorify him, where we glorify him, when we glorify him, all of that's placed in our calling. The places that we work, the churches that we go to, the strangers that we speak to, all that is part of our calling. And he's constantly shaping and adjusting so we can be that vessel that is useful, that can live out our purpose to glorify him through the actions of our calling. So then that brings us to verse 74. May those who fear you see me and be glad because I wait for your word. So this is really about you and me, other brothers and sisters in Christ, recognizing each other. And as we are walking out our faith, we are aligning our hearts with God and the calling that he has for us. That that light is recognizable by other brothers and sisters of God, right? They can see, oh, hey, you know Jesus. This is great. And that can be something that encourages people, especially when they're in seasons of struggle or doubt. It is when that verse, iron sharpens iron comes into play, right? Like when we meet other people that are brothers and sisters in Christ and we're living a life that is glorifying to God, that is very powerful. We we need that. God is expecting that of us. That's why there's so many verses about relationship. And we serve a God that is a relationship. There's three in one. And so being able to live that out so others can see it and be encouraged by it and sharpened by it. So now, so then that brings us to verse 74. May those who fear, oh wait, sorry, verse 75. I know, O Lord, that your judgments are righteous and that in faithfulness you have afflicted me. Now this is when this is when things take a turn, right? It's like, okay, yeah, you fashioned me, and now you got some ideas about like what that fashioning looks like. It's us being in his hands and him having this idea. And part of that is so we can live out his commandments, so we can glorify him and often also strengthen other Christians. And now we get to this point where his judgments are righteous. And if there's a judgment, it means that he's discerning the motivations, the purpose of our actions. And he's the only one that can discern light from dark. Because we'll look at, as humans, we'll just look at behavior and we think, oh yeah, I know what that person's up to. But we really don't. We don't know really what's at the root of that behavior. And all behavior has roots. And most of those roots are from pain and suffering, trauma, anxiety, and we're operating out of a place of hurt. The saying, hurt people hurt people. That is very true. And we see the behavior, but God knows the motivation of that behavior. And because he knows the motivation of that behavior, he's going to make a judgment and allow certain afflictions to occur in order to shape us into who he has envisioned us to be. And he's faithful to that. We always think about, the scripture that says, he's faithful to finish the work that he started. Yeah, it's the clay, right? He's not just starting to make the pottery and then leaves it like a lot of us do. Oh, I'll start the knitting the sweater and then leave it 2/3 undone. No, he's going to finish the sweater. He's going to finish making the vessel, and he's going to stay faithful to that. So when he recognizes, what our heart motivation is, he's going to make a judgment on that, and he's going to be faithful because ultimately he wants us to become the people that he has envisioned us to be, which is a good thing. I know it doesn't feel good, but it's a good thing. And if you think about it, if you're a parent or if you've been around children, maybe you had to babysit cousins or you have a godchild, whenever that child does something wrong, I'm hoping that you correct them. I'm hoping that there is some type of response that you have to that you don't just let that child continue to break things and dump things and rip things up and say whatever they want to say and eat whatever they want to eat. Because at some level to allow just, reckless abandonment and never put any boundaries or bumpers or corrections, it's going to lead to a person who is not very pleasant and cannot endure the ups and downs of life. So, as a parent or as a mentor, you're going to provide correction. You're going to be faithful to do that because you love that child. You want them to grow up and be a happy, healthy, resilient human being that contributes to the world with light instead of contributing to the darkness. So I mean, think of it that way. It totally makes sense. And Hebrew 12:10 says, tell us, and Hebrew 12:10 tells us that God disciplines for our good so we may share in his holiness. Because ultimately, he wants us to be more like him. He wants us to reflect him. And he's going to be faithful to the actions that require that. So those actions are going to require love and compassion. And they're also going to require discipline, which really means to teach. I think a lot of times we think of it as this harsh thing, but it's to teach. And he wants us to know him and trust him. And the only way you really get trust and understanding is when you have those moments of correction. I remember when I used to spend a lot of time with my goddaughter and she would do something. I remember this one time she didn't want to get into the shower and we went round and round and round about it. Actually, no, we didn't go round and round because I don't go round and round with children. I've done too much work with disciplining children as a therapist. And so I'm pretty good about this, but she wanted me to go round and round with her and I refused. I just made it very simple. It's like, listen, this is what you need to be doing. And either you do it, and if you do it, then this is the positive outcome that you get. We get to spend more time together before you go to bed, or you don't do it. And you're still going to have to do the thing because I know it's important for you to do it because you need to take a shower. Like that's a need, especially for a little kid who's been outside all day. And you're going to miss out on this good thing that was on the other side of it, right? Because I would not be loving her if I just let her show up to school dirty and dirty clothes, gross hair. I'm setting her up to be picked on and ridiculed. Why would I do that? I mean, out of love, I'm going to teach her, I'm going to discipline her so she knows how to take care of herself so she can show up in the world as her best self. So, does that make sense? So, verses 76 through 77. Um, let's see. Oh, may your loving kindness comfort me according to your word. May your compassion come to me that I may live. So the psalmist recognizes that in affliction, the way to endure affliction is really turning to God for comfort, recognizing that his mercy is a show of his compassion and his love. Same thing that I did with my granddaughter, oh my gosh, my goddaughter. I spoke to her out of love and compassion because I wanted the best for her. I understood she was upset, right? So yes, you can cry, you can be upset, you can be mad, but I'm doing this because I love you. And I'm going to help you get through this because my love and my mercy is going to help guide you in how to endure, how to persevere this experience. Because it's not meant to break you, it's meant to build you. Okay. So thinking of that way, afflictions, when we're going through those seasons of discipline, it's not meant to break us, it's meant to build us. Just like when I'm putting that pressure on the clay, I'm not putting the pressure on the clay so I have just another misshapen form of clay. I'm putting the pressure on there so I can build it into something that will hold something that will be beneficial for me and others. Got it? Okay. And then let's see here. Yeah, this is one of those I kind of went through line by line. So I just felt like each line could just be unpacked with all these great things. And then we get to verse 78. May the arrogant be ashamed, for they subvert me with a lie, but I shall meditate on your precepts. This is so powerful. Because a lot of times what can happen, we can get ourselves in a pickle because somebody who's prideful, not mature in the faith, they're maturing. We're always in a progression towards maturity. And usually we overestimate our maturity until we're put in seasons of affliction. At least that's been my experience. Maybe you're different, then yay for you. Really, truly, yay for you. I usually recognize that I'm not as mature in my faith as I thought I was whenever I hit a bumpy season, which is good because again, that is an opportunity for God to download more of his perspective, his wisdom, his mercy and grace. So when I come out on the other side, I am more mature. And I think we all have that coworker or that family member that shows up and they just say the thing. They just do the thing. And you want to lay hands on them. And I don't mean in a good way, right? And you're like, oh my goodness. Uh, but here's the thing, the more you stay in the word and the more you understand who God is and what he's wanting for you, you don't focus on that prideful person. You understand, especially if they're not a child of God. Why would we expect them to behave holy or in a godly way if they don't even know who God is? I mean, that's like expecting a child that's adopted to act like their biological parents when they've never met them. I mean, some of that might be genetic, but some of it's just being around that person and copying the mannerisms and the way of being. So there's a part of us that, yeah, it's just woven into us, but that gets matured by constant being around in connection. And so for somebody who's never developed a relationship with God, of course they're going to be like the world. They're going to be how we were before we got to know God at a deeper level. And so it's recognizing that, okay, instead of focusing on the behavior, I'm going to focus on what I know about God. I don't have to fight this battle. He'll fight my battle. He'll fight it. And if it's something, just an ongoing like season of trial, it's going to be his compassion, his mercies that is going to help me endure that season. And I know I've talked before about seasons where I've had that are really challenging. This is one of those seasons as I'm trying to, not trying, as I'm healing, not trying to heal. Let's use correct words here. As I'm healing from my vestibular disorders, it's very isolating. A social person like me is very isolated. And it's been a lot of me digging into God and trying to make sense of, what are my next steps? Who are you calling me to be? And not getting so bogged down in other people's expectations about how quickly I should heal or what I should be doing or should not be doing. None of that. And just focusing on, okay, God, what do you say about how to walk through these seasons? What do I need to be doing? What do I need to be listening to? Where do I need to be turning? You guide me. And I'm going to focus on you instead of this over here. And I definitely think we need that for social media because we can get people in our comments saying all kinds of things and recognizing that's not my fight. That's not my battle. My purpose is to listen to what God is telling me to do. In order to do that, you have to know his word. And the more you know his word, the easier it is to meditate on his word when you're in those seasons and not get so bogged down by what that person's doing. Okay. Then, and also, and here's something you can meditate on. Jeremiah 50:32 tells us that the arrogant will fall and there will be no one to pick them up. Right. So remember that the arrogant will fall and there'll be no one to pick them up. And for all you know, that person just may not have had their Damascus Road moment, because if you're familiar with the New Testament, then you know that before Paul, the author of the majority of the New Testament, was Paul, he was Saul, and he persecuted Christians. And he was brutal to Christians. And then he had a Damascus Road moment, and he was made blind, and then he saw. So God is the only one that knows how to humble someone, how to call someone out of their how to call someone out of their blindness. He's it. He's the only one. And then that leads us to the last verse that I really want to spend some time on is, may my heart be blameless in your statutes so that I will not be ashamed. The psalmist recognizes, I'm going to have these seasons that are challenging, and I want to make sure that as I'm walking through my day, through my life, that I know the word well. So I am not doing things to separate me from God. And when I sin, when I disobey, it creates a separation. Now, he doesn't leave us. He's not going to be like, see you later, kicking you out of the house. I mean, that's not loving. I mean, when your kids mess up, do you kick them out of the house and lock the door and change the locks? I would hope not. um, but you do set boundaries. Do you remind them of they have your last name and there's a certain expectation, right? And so, same thing here. The psalmist is like, hey, may I have a heart that's blameless? May I have a heart that has spent so much time with you in your word that I know it so well that the moment I step out of line or do something wonky or crazy, or I'm in a season that's meant to discipline me or just not even, it might even be discipline. It may just be shaping you and molding you into who He's designed you to be. May I walk through that in a way that is glorifying to you ultimately. That that I'm not gonna dishonor the name, and not that God needs us to. I mean, He's got His own honor and holiness, but you know what I mean, right? I mean that I live in a way that reveals that I am a child of God, right? That when I study the Bible, I love Jesus, that rings true. It tracks. Having that kind of heart. And that's the kind of heart that I want. I want it to be when I'm in those seasons when I know I'm being disciplined or God is purifying me, that I walk in a way, and it's not going to be perfect. It's never perfect. I definitely have not walked through this season perfectly, but I hope that people are watching me and they see somebody who is very much so in love with Jesus. I think every conversation I talk about, this is what God has done. This is what I've seen Him do. This is what I've heard Him say. But that's my focus. And I'm tearing up, right? Because I want what the psalmist wants. And all these it's basically saying, God, I'm asking you. I know I'm not in charge of this. I'm not in charge of a blameless heart. I'm not in charge uh, of how like experiencing your compassion and shifting my focus from the people that are arrogant. I'm not in charge of that. I need you to help me do those things. I need your grace to empower me to develop this blameless heart and to turn away from the people that are lying about me and just to focus on what you're providing me in this season. So because our afflictions, those moments when we are humbled, disciplined, it reminds us of our need for God, His faithfulness, His tender mercies, and we can't become the vessel He desires without Him, His pressure, and His blessings. Therefore, like I said, the last prayer is for a blameless heart. And Jeremiah 17:9 tells us that our heart is more deceitful than anything. And Proverbs 4:23 tells us to guard our heart because it is a source of life. So here it's the psalmist saying, I want this blameless heart. I know that you're in charge of that. And we got to think about what does it mean to guard our hearts? I think a lot of times people will take those scriptures to mean, I've got to keep people at a distance. And that's not what it's saying. When you think about what does a guard do? If you go into a building, what is the guard doing? Right? They're not keeping people at a distance. They're not doing that. What they're doing is they're determining who really needs to be coming in and who might need to be staying out, right? If they look like they're not here for the purposes of what the store has to offer. So for you and I, that's going to be, is this book something I should be looking at? Is this music something I should be listening to? Is this food something I should be consuming? Is this person that I'm dating, is this the person that I should be dating? Are we equally yoked? Like the way I'm dressing is really looking at, it's not just one thing. It's, am I allowing entry of the things that are in alignment with the purposes of the business that need to be taking place here for your purposes, for your calling? Am I allowing things in that help me fulfill that? Or am I letting in the riffraff that's going to distract me, that's going to cause problems, and I don't have enough scripture awareness, enough relationship with God that he when he's trying to shift my focus away from the proud, I keep my focus there, right? So it's like what am I allowing into my life, and what am I recognizing could be problematic, and am I systematically going through and making adjustments like I do after every season. I go through my clothes and go, did I wear this year? Did I wear this season? Okay, if I didn't wear it, I got a month to work it into my wardrobe, and if I'm not wearing it, then it needs to go, right? So it's that kind of like, let me guard, let me make sure that I'm allowing the things that serve a purpose for my growth entry, and the things that can be distracting and problematic, they need to go. And not harsh, like we're not going to be cruel to people, but just recognizing that every friend is meant to be for us all season. Sometimes not even for us. And it could be somebody who's a Christian, because everybody's different in different phases of their maturity. But just learning, allowing God to give you that discernment to know what what can pass through, what gains entry, and what needs to stay at the door. So, because what we don't want is for our lack of monitoring to allow influences that can corrupt us and result in long-term harm. Okay, so what are you watching? What are you reading, eating, listening to? What words do you speak? What do you think about? How do you think about others? Yourself? You get the idea, right? So, as always, there are 4 questions at the bottom. I'm always going to ask you, what did you learn about God? I'm always going to ask you, where do you see Jesus in these verses? And how do you think your relationship with God would be if you never experienced weakness or trials? I know I would probably be very prideful. I am prideful, but I'd be a lot more prideful. I would be a hot mess. Blah. Ugh. I didn't even think about that. That'd be a hot mess. And what does it mean to guard one's heart? What does it look like for you? So I just gave you some examples, right? Like, what are you reading? What are you thinking about? Like all those things. And really sit with those questions and let the Holy Spirit convict you. Bring things up that you can make adjustments to. You don't have to make adjustments to all the things snap, snap. It's a process. We can't do this on our own. We have to invite him in to help us do it, because I do not have that kind of willpower. I need God's grace, which is our power. And a lot of times we don't talk about it like that, but that's exactly what it is. So there you have it. 10 discussions down. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope these videos have been helpful to you. As always, leave comments down below and go in the description and get the questions and get the recipe for today's sweet treat. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. And if you are in the US, July 4th is next weekend. Have a great time celebrating. Be safe. And I will see you in 2 weeks. Take care. Bye. I gotta come over here and turn it off. Da 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 da. This is gonna look a little weird. Probably gonna see stuff. How do I turn it off?